All right. So men are needed. Mean girls got to go.
Mean girls got to go.
Mean girls got to go. And the mean girl within us has got to go.
Well, okay. So let's just soften that really quick. Okay.
Because see, this is why you're invited. Because I'm the mean girl.
We all have this fierceness within us that we want to be right.
Yes.
We want to be seen. We want to be heard.
Yes.
We want to be gazed upon with mystery and majesty and all of the things that just are like, yes.
Yes.
And in that, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, if you're doing it for yourself, fantastic. But if you're doing it to hurt somebody else, not okay.
No.
You have to just soften it.
Yes.
So that it becomes more gentle for yourself. So that when you're treating yourself gently, then that aspects of life that become intense or confusing or unstable or all the multitude of things on the other side of it, the more gentle you can be, the more gentle you give. So this is really the pieces of it, is that the emotion is the emotion, but how we interact with other people is the principal factor of being more feminine and really sharing that.
The true femininity.
Right.
The femininity that we want to, that I believe women truly, truly want to embrace.
Exactly. We just have never been given
or taught.
Taught what that is.
Yes, because it's not very popular. Right?
No, it isn't.
Power is popular.
Exactly.
Power is super popular.
Exactly. And this whole, there's a whole other movement of the whole pussy power thing, and I just can't even. I get it. Yeah. I get it.
I get where it came from.
Yes.
But I think it went too far.
But exactly. You're like, yes, we have sexuality, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think
when we use it to manipulate and extort is the problem.
That is exactly right. Yeah.
Because we do.
Right.
Because that's how women have learned inappropriately to get what they want.
Right.
And we've actually been taught it's okay via the media.
Right. Right. Yes.
Where we learn how to be adults.
Right.
The TV. I was raised on the Cosby Show. And I
think we all were raised on the Cosby Show. And then to find out,
I know, which was such a bummer because I wanted that to be my family.
Right, exactly. Everybody did,
I know.
Right?
The perfect dad, the perfect mom. And they disciplined so appropriately and smart.
Absolutely.
And the kids were cool. Lisa Bonet was cool. Oh, I wanted to be her. It was so cool.
Me too.
So jealous.
Right? Absolutely.
In a happy way.
In a happy way.
Yeah. Like, I'm happy for her. Like, you know what I mean? And I think, okay, so jealousy is another issue.
Yes.
Jealousy, comparison.
Right. Comparison is the thief of joy. So you got to remember that because it will
steal your joy.
Steal every ounce of joy.
And why would we focus on what somebody has?
Right.
Or focus on what we want and go get it?
Right. Exactly.
Like, why?
Right.
You know, I'm not going to look like Jennifer Lopez.
No.
I'm going to have to learn to appreciate this.
Yes. And this is the whole thing, right? Like, how do you really start appreciating exactly who you are? You have to start seeing yourself differently.
I think what it all comes down to, all of this, and you said this earlier, is we're not loving ourselves. Not you or me. Well, this is true. Me too. I'm still learning to love myself too. It's been an ongoing thing that I've been searching to learn.
Right.
And I think it's where it all stems from.
Yes.
Is not loving ourselves. This whole conversation.
Right. Well, this is the whole thing of broken family, right?
Yes.
This is where it starts.
Yes.
Is that you don't have equal representation, whether your parents were there or not there, whether they're there half the time or one. Right. Exactly. I mean, we, again, product of the 80s, my mom was the only person. I mean, I was really old when I realized the things that I thought my dad was actually doing were all my mother, which was so painful.
Yes, because you set up a system in your head.
In my head, right, that he actually cared, right? And and then you go through that whole process and realize that was never him, that was my mom. And again, this is the piece of it is okay, well, how do I love myself if at the essence, the person who had to be there in order to create myself isn't in the picture? Where does that love come from? And how do we really start seeing, right? You have to have, to me, therapy is a beautiful thing.
Yes,
and if
I recommend.
If you aren't on the couch, you should do that with somebody professionally. Probably you should pay for it because it's a lot easier than dumping that on your friends all the time.
Well, it's not fair to your friends.
Right, exactly.
It isn't.
No.
Let's have fun with your friends. Go see a therapist.
Yes. Enjoy the cocktails with your friends and then, it will be a lot easier.
It'll be so much more fun.
Yes. Right.
You'll be more fun. You'll have more friends.
Yes. That's true. But again, I think if you don't know how to do that for yourself, we constantly are in this comparison.
When you grow up in a broken family, there's could be multiple issues. Like there's a reason they're broken.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They might be broken.
They might be broken.
And then there's this abandonment, the rejection.
Yes.
From, especially if it's your father.
Right.
Like my father left my family. It was very difficult for me to think I deserved being loved.
Right.
So how could I love myself if even the man who gave birth to me can't love me?
Right. Exactly.
Or the woman.
Right. Exactly.
It's a difficult journey. And then let's say your mom is uber loving. And you grew up in a single mom. It doesn't matter if mom's working her tail off so you can eat.
Right.
You can see that, the love in that.
Yeah.
But you still need the hugs.
Right.
You still need the time.
Yes.
There's like a reason for families.
Right.
And that's why two-parent families are so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's because one person can't do it all.
Right.
You just really can't. And that's the other lie we've been sold.
Yes.
By feminism, as you can have it all and do it all.
Right.
And it is such a lie. You can do it all, kinda.
Alone.
Yeah.
Right.
If you don't have a dog or a plant.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. You still need friends. You still need that support and but if even as women, you have male friends or friends as husbands that you're like, I do not want to have this conversation with my husband. I don't know why you wouldn't have that conversation with your husband, but
sometimes
maybe
girl talk.
Right, exactly. But
He doesn't want to
sometimes
hear
even
it.
then we still ask the husband, okay, you're in the space. Sorry, dude. Right?
You have to hear it.
You're sitting around talking to 4 women. You're the guy. So here's the question.
Exactly.
Right? And we need their input. And
we do.
Because again, women, any singular group or whatever can come into this sort of crazy.
Yes.
Right? And that's the whole thing is that we continually, as women, without the reflection of masculinity, it just becomes so toxic, right? Because it's constantly the same thing. Like this is the other reason why I had to leave the hairdresser. Everybody gossiped. It was the worst salon I had ever been in.
Steel Magnolias gossiping.
No, it's terrible. It was terrible. And everybody was, on the verge of divorce. And it was awful. And to sit in that, because it's a room full of women, right? And they're just having that conversation with every woman that comes in. And you're like, there's one thing with processing through conversation, but there's another where you're like,
so I get processing.
Yes,
and help.
Absolutely.
And I'm kind of trying to be careful about that and make sure that we all love the same person if it's an issue.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's a difficult, if we're going through something difficult, because we have family stuff that comes up and we kind of all pitch in sometimes.
Yes.
And you have to talk about the thing.
Right, but it has to come from
the place.
Right, exactly.
The right place.
The love actually from this compassion, grace, mercy for that person.
Not, can you believe what that boy did again?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right.
It's like, okay, how do we help this kid? How do we support him?
Exactly. Yes. But it can't just be your idea, right? It also, because you are married, it has to have that equal support of your husband who says, okay, well, we are not going in and rescuing them again.
Yes.
But we can do this.
Yes.
And you have to agree. And that's the hard part. Right, exactly.
So here's the hard part about toxic femininity. We've been told we don't have to listen to him.
Yeah, see, I do not agree with that.
I don't either.
Right.
But that's what I did for years.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it created a huge problem in our family because I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to say it. And Trevor, I hope you forgive me. So we have an older son that my husband has been with since he was 2. I did not let him discipline him. That was my role. He would give me input. I'm like, not your kid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Boy, did we pay for that.
Oh, man. I'll bet.
Boy, did my son pay for that.
I'll bet.
My son paid for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't protecting him. I was hurting him because my husband is wise.
Yeah. Right.
He's wise.
Yes.
And logical.
Yes.
And I'm emotional.
Yes.
And I would, like, when your baby's hurt as a woman, like, you want to nurture him, but like sometimes you run and do the wrong thing because you want to nurture him.
Yes.
And I did every chance I got.
Right.
And we call it codependency.
Yes, it is 100% codependency.
Yes.
100%.
Yes, we're going to go save him and not make him work through it. And my husband is not
like that. No, right. Yeah, exactly.
And had I let him stop that behavior, who knows, who knows?
Right. All the choices maybe could have been different. But again, right.
Because we have another son who is 24 and we were a unit.
Right.
Sometimes we disagreed and I would sneak stuff I shouldn't have. Sorry. Because I'm a mama.
Right, exactly.
And
you're still trying to protect and love and do all the things.
And if dad was too harsh, I'd come in and pick him up.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. He was mean. You're right. He
take
was.
My husband to the room. That was really harsh. You really think you need to talk to him like that? And yes, I do. Okay. But it was a different conversation.
Right.
And and important. I think I didn't realize how important it was maybe to the last couple of years now that my sons are fully grown.
Right.
And they're dealing with life and girlfriends and jobs and how they see
how they're dealing with it differently.
They are.
Because of,
Yes.
Yeah, the essence. Yeah.
And they're both coming along.
Yes.
And it's good, but it's different.
Yes.
It is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, again, I guess men are useful for lots of things.
They are. They
protect us. They keep us safe. They give us care.
Keep us sane.
And they provide for us. And they want to.
Yes.
They do want to.
Yes.
And I will tell another story my husband's going to be mad about.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a time in our life when we lost everything.
Yeah.
2008, 2009-ish. He was a builder in that time, and we had over-speculated. So I started making more money. When I started making more money than him, the dynamics changed, right? In our home, and it wasn't good.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't good.
Right.
Because we have a German Shepherd out here that we're babysitting. It's his job to guard the house.
Right, yeah.
It's his job. He doesn't feel like he has a purpose if we don't let him guard the house.
Right.
My husband has always provided for our family. He wanted to feel that that was his purpose. And it came out, right? He wanted to be okay with it because this is the world we live in, right? Women should be able to make money. They should be able to do things. And but it wasn't. It wasn't okay with him. Deep down inside, he wanted to provide.
Yes.
He wants to be the provider. He wants my money to be extra.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And why is that so wrong?
Right. I mean,
why is that wrong?
It isn't.
Why are the women in an uproar over this? I'm probably going to get flamed for this.
You probably will get flamed for this. I mean, I think that there's a theory behind it that if you are criticized for that or what's the word? I don't know, no, I like big for your britches. That's a terrible way to say it. But you know what I mean? Like if you become more important, then it shifts the flow from your nurturing being from a place of generosity.
Right.
And it becomes, he's seeing it as he becomes then more dependent, right? Where which I think in general, again, if you're 100% in relationship, 100% you're this and 100% you're this. And there are moments where this 100% is just giving more because that's how it works.
And like now I think it would be different. I think it would be more like, we're just flowing through this, honey.
Right. Yes.
But he was in his 30s.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
However old.
Right. Right.
I don't know.
Ish.
I can't do I told you about the math problem, right? I couldn't make it through statistics and probability. So,
right, exactly. So again, that comes to emotional maturity, right? Exactly. So as you're going through life, everybody gets to a point in their age where they just stop giving
caring about any of it.
Right, exactly. But
except
until
the women in the matriarchy,
right, exactly,
who are upset,
they think
they would be mad at my husband for this.
Yes, they would.
That he would have a feeling,
right,
and he's not allowed to feel that way.
Right, which is unfortunate because he is 100%. How do you heal?
Yes.
You have to let go in some part of it. Yes.
We have to
just move through it in a more grace-filled or gentle way.
Yes.
Because it all is going to suck.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Especially now, even more so, right?
Try to find some moments of good.
Right, exactly.
Why are we focusing on beating people up?
Right. You got to hold on to the beauty of the connection. Like we're all wired for connection anyway.
Yes.
And I think it just pits us against each other in a way it's just so unfortunate and unnecessary.
So just my opinion that my man should be a provider, that I've actually just walked into traditional values recently. I love them.
Right? They're fantastic.
Like, why?
They're fantastic.
Like my husband and I
Why would we ever get rid of this? Right.
Oh my gosh. My husband and I are a team.
Yes.
Our finances are together for the first time in like decades. Like we went with a couple decades without this.
I really think this is part of the other piece of COVID that really helps people understand the value of the family unit. Where before everybody's just constantly going here and there. And here you had COVID, all of a sudden everybody got shoved into the same house, the same, you couldn't do anything in a way, but it also gave you an opportunity to really appreciate the relationship and the family that you have. And some of us, don't have that.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. There are some people who realized how toxic and awful their family was, and they were just trying to get through the abuses and all of the,
and it was too overwhelming.
It's too overwhelming. And yes, please get out of that.
Yes, nobody.
Because you don't need that. Nobody needs that. No. But it also drove people into, we could save this if we did these things, right? And really the willingness of trying to develop the relationships. And I mean, people, I think 50% of America went into therapy during COVID, which I
was probably a gift.
Right,
it's probably a gift.
Right.
Like we could all use therapy.
Yes. I mean, we're all, oh my gosh, the list of things that we all have gone through.
There was a lot of good things that happened that I could just now say we're good.
Right.
Last year I was telling great. But
right, but this is the whole thing is that our generation has gone through, more events, catastrophic events than any generation really before us.
Interesting.
That you're like, oh my gosh, no wonder why we all need therapy.
Really?
Just go.
And I think that's part of this toxicity coming out. Like when I'm toxic, it's because I'm not dealing with something.
Right, exactly.
Right?
100%.
And I think
you're trying to deal with it yourself.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the toxicity.
I don't know if I'm even trying to deal with it.
Well, okay.
Because sometimes I try to ignore it.
But again, you are doing it, right?
Yes.
And then the way you create and continue that is to isolate, right?
Yes.
And you're like, no.
Yep.
You are not alone.
So what I did to my husband this morning was I get really frustrated with him because he had an opinion about how we were going to set up the podcast. Okay. And he was in the middle of something. And it was irritating him how slow I was moving about the setup because he knew I had a lot to do. And so did I. But I was needing him to move forward with his life out of here.
Bye-bye.
And I got really frustrated. And I'm like, you have no right to tell me what to do. You need to not be in this. And I'm doing my whole thing and being a toxic woman. And it reminded me of a study that was done.
I love it. I love it.
He would never talk to me like that.
Oh.
So women are more likely to be verbally, emotionally, and psychologically abusive than men.
100%.
And we don't know we're doing that.
No.
So I just saw this study recently.
Oh, interesting.
And I thought, I was thinking, how many things have I said, like when I'm angry or mad, that he would never say to me?
Oh, wow.
Women, and we get away with it.
Why not? Yeah.
Why?
That's a good question.
It's not fair.
It is not
It's not fair.
It's not fair.
And you see,
I think part of the reason we get away with it is because the level of their strength is different than ours.
They can punch us.
Right. It would really
We don't want them to. Thank you. Thank you that I do not have an abusive husband.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's almost like I'm pushing him to do it sometimes. But I mean, he would never do it.
Right. Absolutely.
Because he's a strong man, but he's also wise. Like he's not.
Right. He's also gentle. Yeah. He isn't going to just.
Yeah, you know him.
Right. I'm like, he's not going to just go, well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few times.
He could.
He could. I mean, you push anyone too far. I think I'm past the pushing him age. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. He's at this point going,
no.
Okay, yeah.
He treats me like I'm a yapping Yorkie. There's no coincidence I have a yapping Yorkie.
Right? Again, we all get to an age where we're like, that just doesn't,
She's going to be fine in 5 minutes. I'm not going to engage.
It's a wise decision.
It is. But I just don't see, I mean, like, so his counterpart, he's not toxic.
Right.
So I'm far more toxic than him.
Yeah.
So we can't let him watch this. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Okay, it'll be our secret. Don't you worry. It'll be all good.
We can't educate the man.
Of knowing really who's toxic. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, we have to, he gets blamed for all this stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
okay.
And I think we kind of talked about this. This is on the list. The lack of empowerment. This is kind of what I thought feminism was about when I was younger. Was like, we want to empower and lift up women.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
I think
I have no problem with that. But that's not what they really do.
No, that isn't.
It isn't.
The ideology, I think, is what they promote, and not the femininity. They're not promoting femininity in the way that it's feminine.
No,
they're promoting the idea that we should be equal. We should blah 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 blah.
Unless you don't agree with us.
Unless you don't, and then you're totally
then you're like a man.
Right. Exactly.
Then you're as worthless as a man now.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
So maybe that's what I'm angry about.
Okay. Maybe that's a fair point to be angry about.
Maybe it's not just my boys, but I do worry about my boys too. You know what I mean? I worry about them having children and what they're surrounded with in the conversations that they are afraid to have.
Right.
I want, when they get into relationships, I don't want them to be like, I can't say this. And my husband has done that where I can just see him just shutting down, like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. I mean, years ago.
Oh, right.
Well, maybe that's a lie. Maybe like last year. Maybe last month.
It was this morning.
Yeah. All right. As recently as this morning.
Yeah.
Where they just kind of shut down and he's not going to voice his opinion because he doesn't want to deal with a maniac.
Right.
And I don't want my boys to deal with a woman like me.
No. Well, I mean, this is the truth of it.
They get to have a voice.
They get to have a voice. Yes. You absolutely have a voice.
Yes.
The difference is that, again, men they're not going to, because they know not to really go in. I mean, the healthy ones just do it in a way that they don't have to use all the words or all of they just are like.
There's a presence. Like my husband's a presence.
Exactly. And that is what we want. Really, that's what we want.
True.
We want the presence of it so that we can just stop doing this whole ping pong.
Yes. Just know I am not a shrill maniac all the time, people.
Well,
just when somebody's coming over and my house is not clean.
There are moments. Everybody does that. I mean, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yes.
I got family coming into town soon, and all I can think is, I need a new house. I'll just move in somewhere else temporarily and it'll be fine and they'll never know. And
It's an Airbnb.
Okay. Yeah, right.
That's a great business model.
Probably why they have Airbnb.
Yeah, exactly. I live here. So there's obviously a narrative, an agenda that tells us that the patriarchy is bad and we have to rise up against them and beat them up, right?
Right.
I don't like it.
That's how it feels. Yes.
I don't like it. And I don't think a lot of people like it.
No.
But I think we have to figure out a way to fight it in a lovely way, in a feminine way, in a not tear the people who believe this stuff down way.
Right.
Because, I mean, I do believe that if somebody has probably formed some of these ideas, has probably been hurt by a man.
Right.
I've been hurt by a man and had these ideas that all men were bad.
Right.
Until all of the men in my life became good.
Right. Exactly.
Now I see it differently.
Right.
But you can see where that would happen.
Right.
So,
okay. So just one thing, you became good with you.
Yes.
And therefore, the men in your life, you could actually see the good in them.
yes.
That's the difference.
That's true, because I didn't really trade them all out.
Right.
There's some truth there. And you've seen the process, so I'm going to believe you. I'm going to believe you on that. So I feel like part of this is knowing our identity.
Yes.
What you just basically said, right?
Yeah.
And this is what you help people with.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, thank you, by the way.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And I think if you know who you are, then you're not going to be a victim. You're not going to be as offended.
Right.
You find a way. You know what I mean? We're smart. Right. Women are smart.
So
we can find a way.
Right. And this is, I mean, again, this is really the essence and beauty of women is that none of us think alike in any way, shape, or form.
Yes.
And that really is what makes it incredible, because we all get to share that one unique thing that we do, right? And really, the healing comes when you start to reveal that to yourself. Like, who are you? What is it that you want? How do you want to do it? And really moving through emotions and embodiment of the thing or your own essence to be more feminine, to be more
to know
gentle,
what your essence is.
Right, exactly.
And that's part of knowing, I guess, right? Identity.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. And really allow those pieces of yourself to come out in a way that is safe for you to share them, to soften towards other people who see you differently than you are wanting to be for yourself, right? Because again, there's a lot of conflict in that. But again, knowing your own essence. Yes, that's how I was, but this is really who I want to be. And how do you help yourself and other people be really in this moment
and
as themselves?
And I think we have to heal our trauma.
Yes,
right.
100%.
And we live in a broken, hurting world. So regardless of how tough you are, nobody gets out unscathed.
No, right.
We all get hurt.
Yes.
Because we're dealing with humans.
Yes.
And some do it on accident, some do it on purpose. Right. And it's what it is.
Yes.
So I think we have to learn to deal with our trauma.
We do. Heal thyself. Healer, heal thyself. So
that we can heal others.
Yes.
Heal yourself so you can hear and see truth.
Yes.
Because it's really hard to see truth when you're in dysfunction.
Right.
You can't see it.
Right.
It's like a chaotic whirlwind.
Right. This is the beauty of truth. The truth. How do you know that it's true? That is a big question. How do you know what's true?
Yes.
Well, because that truth applies to me as a woman. It applies to them as men. It applies to every plant, tree, dogs, horses. That's how you know it's true, when it absolutely affects everything the same way. Truth.
There is a truth.
There is a truth.
And your truth doesn't necessarily make it a truth.
No, that's you believing what your perceived idea is. That's your belief system. But that doesn't necessarily always mean it's based on actual truth. Truth is when it applies to everybody. Exactly the same.
I like that. I really like that. I think too, how we heal this thing with men,
Yes.
because I think they're going to need to heal from this.
Yeah.
This toxic masculinity,
Right.
this
Absolutely.
and the patriarchy, these movies, social media that seems to be completely against men right now.
Right, yeah.
Like there's going to be some healing need. And I think we nurture men.
We
I think
100% need to start
nurture
nurturing,
men
yeah,
and encouraging them to be themselves and speak out.
Yes.
And it's okay.
In
you get
community,
to speak out.
right, yeah.
With my husband,
Yeah.
you get to speak.
Yeah.
I will shut my mouth and let you speak.
Right.
Like I have to practice this. Because apparently you guys can see I like to talk a lot. I'm a bit of a talker.
Who knew?
So there's that. This movement against men is so organized.
Yes.
And I didn't see it coming.
No.
I didn't see it being as destructive
Right.
as that we all clearly, see it now. Like, not
Right.
we all clearly see it, but many clearly see the actual destruction of this.
Right.
Of the family unit, which is the strongest institution that we have.
Right.
And there's proof and studies behind that. If you guys want them, I'm happy to give them to you. I think appreciating that we're not the same. We have to appreciate we're not the same.
Yeah. We have to replace the value on the fact that women are like this and men behave like this.
Yes. And even though
it's different.
And you said something to me yesterday. There's a masculine and feminine energy in both of us.
Yes.
And we can honor that as well. But what does that even mean? Because I've heard that a lot. And you explained to me, what does it mean to have that I have both masculine and feminine?
Right. Well, okay. So you look at it through leptin and melatonin, right? Or not.
Lipton?
It's not leptin.
Tea?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Cortisol and melatonin.
Okay.
That's how we're going to look at it. Okay. So cortisol is everything that you need for the action to happen, right? Melatonin is everything that you need to slow you down and put you to sleep. So cortisol will wake you up. It gets you through the day. And there's something in that.
Puts you into fight or flight.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So you need that aspect of life to be awake and active, right?
And reactive
then,
when you need to be.
Right, exactly. And then melatonin does everything else. It's very sedative. It helps you slow down, helps you recognize that sleep and rest are necessary. So if you could look at one as a masculine and one as a feminine, then again, you're seeing how
You need both.
you do need both. We have both.
Everyone needs both, but you need more than one or the other sometimes.
Right, exactly. Like sometimes you do, like when you're sick or, under a lot of stress, you don't want more cortisol. You want more melatonin. Like how do you come down and increase your melatonin to relax and to rest and get all the fluid and everything that happens when you're very cortisol heightened, right? You just end up holding on to everything and you don't want to do that. You want to relax and soften and let all those fluids go. And the only way to do that is to have increased melatonin, which comes from rest and your vagus nerve and really being able to settle both. But we are, in essence, both because you have to have both. You need to be awake and be able to do all the things that you need to do in a day. Plus, you also need rest and sleep. And that's the easiest way to show it is that.
Compare it. Okay.
We have two hormones that drive our life. As a human, it's important to recognize that you are always both.
So I liked something you said about love because I think we need to learn what love actually is. Love is not sexual context. It's not giving you all of my time and energy.
Right.
Love is not a lot of things that we think it is.
Right.
Love is not saying I love you on social media.
No.
Okay. It's nice if that happens. I'm not saying, but some people feel like this is enough.
Right.
And then they don't get the real love, the patience, the kindness, the compassionate, all of the other things that we get, that we learn, the forgiveness, the selflessness.
Right. So this is one of my favorite, because love is a multifaceted word and expression. It becomes that it's in its nature. it just is more than one thing. You cannot label it love. Love is, right? It is everything. So for me, the best example of what love is water. When you step into water, no matter what that water is, it will hold you. It will make space for you. It doesn't care how much you weigh. It doesn't care what color your hair is, what color your eyes, how much money you make, what job you do. It just makes room for you. And that to me is the beauty of love. You can be anything in it. And so again, the deeper you move into water, the scarier it gets, right? The deeper you go, the more trusting you have to be. That's the other part. So in water, if you cannot relax, it's actually more dangerous for you to not relax. Because in water, relaxing will help you be buoyant. Stress drives you into sinking, right? And more people drown because they can't relax. The beauty of it is you just
in their relationships as well.
Right, exactly.
Right?
100%. Right. The more that you have been with this person, the more anxiety you really start to uncover and reveal because they're seeing you more. There's more of you to be seen, right? And with depth, it just happens that way. But if you can relax into it, you can stay on the surface. You can really have the safety
you can float
of going deep. Yes.
And the water doesn't leave.
And the water doesn't leave.
I love it.
It doesn't go anywhere. It just holds you.
I love it.
And that is really, I think, what makes love so beautiful, is it makes room for everybody and just, it's so gentle. And it can really, really be so healing and nurturing if you let it.
Okay, so we need to heal our trauma, know who we are, love more.
Yep.
Now, there's a transactional thing I think we could do.
Right. Okay.
I think we have to stop funding these things that promote this narrative and this agenda.
Yeah.
We've got to stop giving them our dollars.
Yes.
We have to. We have to.
Right.
There's a reason there's an economy in it.
Right.
There's a reason they get clicks.
Right. And it isn't serving everybody. And what we really need to do and increase is the being of service to everybody.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And we don't have to stomp on others to do that.
In order
because
to
that's
do
not
that.
love.
No, right.
That's not love.
Exactly.
And I'm going to love you if you disagree with everything I said on here.
Absolutely.
And we do have those that do.
Right. Right.
And I think another thing, this is maybe from my Christian point of view, is the best thing that we can do as Christians is to testify our experiences.
Yes.
Like tell people our experiences. I'm going to share with people more that my man is good.
Yes.
Like share good stories.
Right, exactly.
Instead of going to your girlfriends and complaining about them.
Right.
We're going to share that he is good. He is a good man.
Yes.
And I love those things. I love that he's strong.
Yeah.
I love that he cares.
Yeah.
I love all of those. You know what? If it goes down, my man would fight for me.
Yes.
I love that.
Right.
Is that wrong? No.
No.
Like if he thought I was being hurt, he would protect me like a tiger.
Right.
And
you want that.
I want that.
Yes,
I do not want that beaten out of my men or my sons
or
my nephews or anyone.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Maybe a little bit out of that German Shepherd out there.
Right. Yeah. But that is part of the process too, right? You just have to accept.
And this is so funny. The more we are just relaxed about it, the less assertive the German Shepherd is.
Exactly.
But I also think we need to speak up within our friend circles, within our communities, when men are being mistreated like this. Also when women, and I'm not just saying, we just happen to be talking about feminine toxicity.
Right.
I think we've beat up on men enough is why we haven't covered it a lot.
Right.
But there's toxic men out there. We get it.
Absolutely.
But we can speak up against those.
Yes.
And we don't have to say that all men are that way and not all women are this way.
Right.
Right?
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Because I just don't see you bullying somebody in the 5th or 6th grade. I just don't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's really, I don't know of any other way that we change this other than I think women as a collective who feel like we do to some extent. I mean, we didn't agree on everything, but we do believe men are being mistreated, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I think they're being mistreated as a whole.
Yes.
By society.
Right.
Okay.
Because they're being undervalued.
Yes.
Right now. And you're like, no, there is a value in what they've done, what they've put forth for us. They have
created.
Paved the way.
Yes.
We just need to take the reins in a way that is more feminine than masculine feminine.
And there are many men who paved the way for even the feminist movement.
Yes.
Who are standing up saying, yes, equal pay.
Yes.
Yes.
100%. Yes.
So let's not vilify everyone.
Right, exactly. Okay. It is not about just our ideas being right. We just want to make more awareness for the fact that what is happening, we all don't agree with.
Right.
I don't want it to look that way. I don't want it to be detrimental to the men.
It's not love.
No, it's not.
It feels like hate.
It does. But again, I too would soften that a little bit more, but that is just
I'm going to have to show you the TikTok videos. Okay. We'll have to get you on TikTok.
So I don't watch TikTok for a reason. That's not where I get my news or any information.
I don't know if there's news there.
My niece gets her news from TikTok.
Oh, I didn't know.
Like,
I just saw these.
Are you double checking it?
Yeah. Do double. But I mean, where would you get news? I mean, it probably is the most accurate, honestly. I don't know if
probably some truth to that. I don't know if there's probably some truth to that.
Yeah. So anything you want to add?
I think the pieces that we really, as women in general, is to really start appreciating our own essence. Whatever that is for you, whether you are a little more assertive or aggressive or that's fine. Like there's nothing.
To me?
No, I have a friend who her loving is much more aggressive than I am.
Yes.
I am like all
you're soft
puppies and sweet furry. Yes, all of that. Just gentle. That doesn't mean that her loving the way she does it is any less valuable than the way I do it.
It's her.
It's her. Right. And I just think we all need to start embodying that more and just find a way to be more comfortable with sharing who you are with more people in an authentic, honest way. I think we all can really benefit more from that.
And I
trust 5% more.
I really liked what you said at the beginning, that you weren't so easily offended by your sister, that you gave her some space.
Yeah.
And the people who don't agree with us or who are on their journey, give them space.
Yes.
Give them space too.
Please, yes.
Let them speak. Let them be heard.
Right.
But you need to be heard too. We get to be heard too.
Right. Absolutely.
When it's appropriate. And I think that's the problem.
Without the charge of the need to be heard, right?
Yes.
There is a charge that women do when we need to be heard. And you're like, no, just wait. Don't speak from your need to be heard. Speak when you're in a place where it isn't necessary if you're heard right then or not.
Almost every time when I speak from that place, it's in a more high tension environment.
Right.
And I'm not going to be heard anyway.
Right, exactly. They're not going to
There's no words that are going to be received. It's just going to antagonize the situation more.
Exactly. And then you're more upset and they're more upset and there's more pain. And you're like, why?
So I think we need a podcast on how to get along with people.
That's great. I agree.
All right.
So before we close and finish up, I want you to just kind of check in. Feel where you are in your body. Notice what's different. Take a deep breath. And settle. And then share.
So I think when I first started this, I've been kind of worked up about this topic and I was a little angry about it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I got it out.
Yeah.
I got it out.
Yes. Good.
You really helped me see kind of, I knew you would because you always do, the softer side. I come in with a hard edge and you always file me down. So
you're welcome.
I do appreciate that. there's somewhat of just a relief, and that almost like the tension's gone out of it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yay.
Because you could feel that, right?
Yes,
when
exactly.
you came in.
And that's the whole, right. And that really, again, is the beauty of being in our own essence and really appreciating it and taking the time, right, to become more connected and conscious of it. Yeah.
With even ourselves.
Right. We need all of us to be seen, to be heard, to be felt, to be shared. I mean, that's, again, the beauty of love is really, it's about connection and how we honor ourselves. And then through that honor, make space for other people to show up and be able to honor themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of the feminine, really.
That is the beauty of the feminine.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
and
you.
sharing
Thank you for having me.
Wisdom and insight.
Thank you.
And I'll put a link when you get your program ready. It's the 6-week program that's coming up called Reveal. I'm really excited about it.
Me too.
I'm excited to do it.
Yes.
And
yes.
I want to thank you guys for joining us again. I am so grateful. Please like and subscribe. It helps us with the algorithms. I know it's a pain in the butt that everyone asks us, but help us out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.